I think people from this generation, or the postmodern generation, are looking for truth. You know, they don't want people who are fake.
Without a doubt, they're looking to be loved and accepted. And my heart breaks because that's what everybody wants.
I'm convinced the reason our culture has a loss of truth is because long before that, there was a loss of trust.
People hunger for relationships. They hunger for us to really care, not caring just for the sake of our organized religion or our institutions.
I think most of what people want is just acknowledge my pain, acknowledge the torment that it is to really live life, and point to some things that are a little bit better.
We're in an age of spirituality. People pray, but they don't know who God is. People long for a relationship with that God, but they don't know how to achieve that.
One of the struggles for Christianity on the whole is that as the world's changed, the church hasn't changed.
My read is that a generation of churches have chosen to keep their traditions and lose their children. And I think that's the greatest tragedy, because people are far more important than style and structure, rituals and traditions.
We live in an age where many people no longer believe in absolute truth. Because of past violations, their willingness to trust is virtually non-existent. Art and beauty are preeminent. It's music, images, movement. It's all things aesthetic. Not what can be proven, but what can be felt and experienced. And now churches are finding that more and more people are looking elsewhere for spiritual answers. As followers of Christ, the church is therefore being called to embrace this challenge. They've been called to build a bridge to this postmodern generation and to think in new ways about how to convey their unchanging message.
Postmodernism is a very complex term for a complex reality. I think it is characterized by a lot of skepticism about some of the fundamental assumptions and beliefs of the modern period that began in the late 18th century.
We do see around us today that the church has become increasingly marginalized, that people today, in contrast to, say, 50 years ago, are not beating down the door of the church to find answers.
And so I think the challenge is, how does the church do outreach? How does it reach out into a context that already considers itself spiritual and considers the notions of a Bible and a church and a God and a Jesus to be quaint notions of a foregone era?
They're saying that many of the cultural forms of the traditional churches don't translate well to our highly secularized populations.
They love the idea of a Christ who came and died even for the sins of men and women, but they don't like the idea of a church that controls that message.
Really, I think the issue is, how can we take a strong, uncompromising stand for Jesus and yet convey the message in a way that is real and that is understandable to the people that we are trying to reach?
We need to see how the Christian faith can be expressed within postmodern cultural forms, and it can be done. Some churches are doing it. It's very exciting.
The first order of business for us is to create an environment where people can come and they can raise their questions. They can express their doubts. They can harangue at God.
In the process, they're starting churches that look to some degree like the culture around them, and so all they're doing is the same thing that Christians have done for 2,000 years. They're taking the gospel of Christ into their cultural context, and a new church is being birthed there.
In Atlanta, Georgia, an urban area known simply as Little Five Points is a textbook example of a thriving postmodern neighborhood. Among the bars and coffee houses of Little Five Points is located one of the country's most unusual Christian ministries. Its name, appropriately enough, is Revolution.
Little Five Points in Atlanta is a place that I've been drawn to for years, ever since I moved to Atlanta. I've probably known of it for the past 12, 13 years. It's where all the tattoo parlors are and skateboard shops and stuff like that. And it's just a community that I've always been drawn to. You know, a lot of what we do is spending time in a bar or spending time in a concert or going out to a movie or a coffee house, or we just hang out with people. We do what anybody else does in a bar, is sit and hang out. You know, I'll have a cigar, a glass of sweet tea, you know. I don't drink because I've been sober for 7 years. And we just get to know people. That's where people are. I think in the church we always make this mistake of saying, you know, we want people to come to us, you know, and we're really supposed to go to them. I mean, that's what Christ did. He went out into the world. He didn't ask everybody to come to him. Revolution is a ministry to people who feel like they don't fit into church. And I think that we meet a group of people and a type of people who aren't necessarily seeking, aren't going to go walk into a church, but are seeking truth and are seeking, you know, knowledge. And we're able to give that to them without being intimidating. Half the time we don't even talk to them about Jesus. Most of the time we don't. You know, we just get to spend time and get to know them and let them see who we are. And if they're curious about who Christ is in our lives, then we'll share it with them. One of the main things we do is a Bible study on Tuesday night. We meet in the little 5 Points community, and it's just basically a place for people to come and hang out and hear about Jesus and hear about the Bible and be able to ask the questions that most people are afraid to ask.
We hang out. We serve coffee, espresso, lattes. We have music. And about 8 o'clock, Jay will start up, and very relaxed atmosphere. He has a little chair. He sits, he drinks his root beer, and he just talks straight from the Bible. And he puts a twist on it, you know. He's real. He relates to the kids.
It's at night. It's comfortable. It's not Sunday. It's not the average church stigma built around it. Christ says, come as you are. And it's really for the wounded and the hurting, and for those who don't know about Christ, and for those who maybe are kind of tired in their walk with Christ. Well, he's doing this. Well, I saw him getting drunk the other night. He needs to be out of the church. We need to get rid of him. He needs to be in the church. You know, as we say often, you know, when Jesus said healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do, you know, he's saying the church is a hospital. It's a place for sick people.
God has given Jay empathy for people. He can literally, he feels their pain, and he means it.
Love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. Then he gave one new commandment before he died. Growing up the son of Jim and Tammy Faye Baker has been a very interesting thing, but I think it's where I get a lot of my ministry from. The fact that I saw my parents lose their ministry and saw how many Christians just turned their backs on completely. The ultimate goal of Revolution in this ministry is that people will understand Jesus' unconditional love and grace. And I think people from this generation, or the postmodern generation, are looking for truth and looking for acceptance. You know, they don't want people who are fake. They don't want religion. They don't want traditions. They're saying, is something real? Is Christ real? Or is this religion real? Or is this or that real?
I feel that we're reaching these people because simple, basic truth of Jesus, because we're getting to know them. It's a friendship evangelism. We are building friends with these people. They know without a doubt that we love them.
People say, well, you're hanging out with the wrong crowd. You know, why are you hanging out with these people? And I've had people say that to me. But you know, they said the same thing about Jesus when he went to Zacchaeus' house and Matthew's house, and they said, why does he hang out with these people? And he's like, because these are the people I've come to call, and these are the people I've come to reach. And I would say the same thing is, these are the people Christ has a heart for.
The postmodern culture has its own language. To truly reach out to these people, the church must learn to speak their language without compromising the message.
We have to recognize that today in North America, we're in a mission setting, and we're missionaries to this culture.
Whatever the culture is, you incarnate the gospel, embed the gospel in that culture.
The Highlands is an edgy, eclectic, culturally aware neighborhood laid out along historic Bardstown Road in Louisville, Kentucky. It is the ideal setting for an emerging church in a vivid postmodern landscape. One such church, called Sojin, rents space for worship from a Mennonite fellowship in a building originally constructed to house a Jewish synagogue.
The people in our church represent people in the culture in this world today that have recognized the world is changing. We live in a different world, and this different world demands different ways of doing church. And Sojourn wants to be that different church. Sojourn's made up of a lot of very diverse people. You'll walk in and you'll find everything from street kids, punk rockers, skateboarders, urban professionals, single moms.
I walked in and I was just like, wow, I know half the people here. You know, it's just like I could have been skateboarding down the street and just walked right in, sweaty, dirty, carrying a skateboard, and sat down, and it would have been all right.
Sojourn looks edgy, the music comes across edgy. A lot of the people that attend Sojourn, tattoos and their black t-shirts come across as edgy, but the truth is biblical truth, and it's taught clearly and accurately.
All this is just totally going to go by us if we think God's agenda is our surface level happiness. God's greatest agenda is our deep happiness at the core of who we are, in Him, in relationship with Him. When you get a community that's together, it's diverse educationally, it's diverse socioeconomically, it's diverse culturally. It challenges us to center on the cause of Christ. One of our core passions in Sojourn is being creative, because we believe we are created by God to make and celebrate works of beauty. And this is something we seek to foster and cultivate in our community. And one way we do it annually is our annual Kill Your TV, Cultivate Beauty Month. And this month is a month in which we call people to turn off the TV, to just unplug, and to engage in something beautiful. That might be a walk in the woods. It might be pulling out that old canvas that you haven't worked on for a while. It may be giving a try at poetry, or just enjoying a good conversation with a friend. And we inaugurate this month by having an annual TV smashing ceremony. And we get about a dozen TVs and we put it out in the back parking lot of the church, and we whip out the sledgehammers and we just go to town. The name Sojourn always implies a destination and a purpose. It implies that we're going somewhere. Sojourn started when a number of conversations about God, about church, turned into a commitment to start a new community, to be a new kind of community.
So many churches talk community, say community, try to endorse community through programming and whatever they may offer, but at Sojourn it's been just a raw attempt. It was born out of community, it was born out of brokenness.
I believe Sojourn's moving forward because we're willing to just enter raw relationships and communicate the process of following Christ in an unedited, unprocessed manner. Now and forever. Peace be with you all.
People today hunger for community, for relationships that are real. The church can meet this need, but only as it chooses to follow the example of Christ.
And it's high time now that we become intentional about entering into people's world. If you study the life of Christ, you will find that He intentionally entered into people's world of other groups. The Samaritans, women, prostitutes, lepers, all these people were outside His group, but He intentionally built those bridges.
So to reach this generation is not going to be tweaking the church service. It's going to be starting communities that live the Christian life 24/7.
In Minneapolis, Minnesota, a 300-member church called Solomon's Porch is involved in what they freely admit is a grand experiment in communal living.
Hi! How are you guys?
We named the church Solomon's Porch because of a section in the Bible, in the book of Acts, where it describes that the disciples met together in Solomon's porch in some versions of the Bible, or colonnade in others, or portico. And it was the public meeting area of the temple. We wanted to have a place that had its name, that came from the Bible, and told a story about how people were living their lives together. And we're trying to think about, what does it mean to live as a community of people together who share our lives with each other, who are dependent upon each other, and where the other people of this community don't just hold us accountable to our faith, but actually become participants in our faith and participants in our redemption.
God, we just thank you for this group of people and for the community that you've provided for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
So we have a lot of meals together on Wednesday nights. Someone will host a meal in their home, and we eat together and we share our lives with each other, and it becomes a regular rhythm. We say that we're seeking to be a holistic, missional Christian community. And instead of us saying we're a church and people saying, oh, I know what that is, and now they've sort of boxed us into a place. So we're trying to redefine really what it means to be a church and to be a community that's living together. The space that we meet in now, where we've been meeting there for a year, is in a redeveloped urban neighborhood in South Minneapolis. The worship space that we use is set up out of the motif of a home, and we're trying to develop that kind of a relationship in our worship.
We've arranged our gathering space in order that we are comfortable. First of all, we have couches and chairs so that we feel like we're at home and with family. The couches and chairs face each other, just in order that we live open lives with each other.
During our worship times and Sunday nights, we have a variety of elements that are a part of the night. We make our own music. We have a lot of artists, and so we have a lot of songwriters and musicians and poets, and so we have the ability to be able to do that. And in fact, I think one of the reasons we have those people is because we do those things.
You look at the sky, how beautiful it is. You look at the birds, you look at the trees, it's beautiful. And these are just the seeds. Wait until all of this is recreated. That's what makes the story of Jesus the story of good news and of good hope, is because it's gonna get better.
We try to simply answer the question, what do you need in your life, and how can we collectively come together to provide that?
That's a good word.
Some people have chosen to live with each other, not just as roommates, but as a collective of people trying to live their faith with each other.
Jim and Carla Barnhill have been members of Solomon's Porch for almost 2 years. They have 2 children, Emily and Isaac. At church, they met Chris Dyson and her daughter Samantha. Learning that they needed a place to live, the Barnhills offered Chris and Samantha not just a temporary place to stay, but the opportunity to share their lives.
Mom, can you just go get me a glass of water really quick?
Jim and I had talked about living in community at other points in our marriage. And I remember when we were first married, I wasn't crazy about the idea. And there was a sense that I was like, well, I just got all these pretty new dishes and I don't want to share them with anybody, you know?
We knew Chris and Sam from church. And as time went on and there arose a need for them to have a place to stay, for us, it's sort of a no-brainer.
I was so blown away. I have never experienced something like that. They were just so open and giving and accepting.
With the knife? In the dining room?
Yes.
Loving your neighbor is now not a concept, it's a reality. From the moment Lungwort pulled the curtain across the entrance to his boot, it's incredible what we get out of this, and hopefully vice versa. It's an opportunity to love and to grow and to forgive.
For our children, I hope and I think it has been a good example for them to see that, when somebody needs something, if you've got it to give it. And you do it. That's how we live. Because we're Christians, that's how we live.
I feel that Sam and I have sort of an extended family here, and that's very comforting.
The reason that community then is central to Solomon's Porch is that there's a recognition that none of us can live out this faith alone.
So what we're doing isn't just trying to figure out a better way to get to know each other. We're trying to figure out a better way to be us and a better way to be the Christian in the 21st century that we want to be.
Plunging headlong into the culture that is so distinctly LA is a phenomenal church called Mosaic. Established over 60 years ago as Bethel Baptist Church, the congregation has gone through numerous transformations and currently has no permanent place of worship, by choice.
We were made to shine